What would you do if your own sister sent you a wedding invitation with your name missing, then followed it with a message saying her husband didn't want one quote lao ruining their big day? How does a calm man respond when he's erased from the family he once held together? I didn't argue, didn't complain, but by the time their wedding night ended, their honeymoon was gone, their house no longer belonged to them, and the man who mocked me realized he had never understood who I truly was. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and someone's overly sweet vanilla latte. I sat by the window, laptop open, reviewing property compliance reports that nobody else wanted to touch. Friday afternoon. Most people were already mentally checked out for the weekend. My phone buzzed against the table. Dana's name lit up the screen. I picked it up, expecting the usual. Maybe she needed something. Maybe she wanted to reschedule our quarterly lunch that always got pushed back. We hadn't talked much in the past year. The message loaded. Quote 1. I read it twice, then a third time. My sister, the girl I'd helped through college when our parents couldn't, the one I'd co-signed an apartment for when she had no credit, had just told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding because her fiancé thought I was pathetic. I set the phone down carefully. Outside, people walked past in the autumn sunlight, living their Friday afternoon lives. None of them knew that my family had just erased me with a text message. I typed back, quote, 22, short, polite, no argument, no guilt trip, no emotional explosion, another buzz, Dana again. Quote 3, mature, the word people use when they want you to accept being disrespected quietly. I closed my laptop and left the coffee shop. 2 blocks down, I could see the bridal boutique where Dana had scheduled her final fitting. I wasn't planning to go there, but as I walked past, I heard voices. Can't believe he actually thought he'd be part of this. Trent's voice carried across the sidewalk. He stood outside the boutique entrance, phone pressed to his ear. Quote 5. Several pedestrians had slowed down, glancing over at the loud conversation. Trent noticed the attention and seemed to enjoy it. Quote 6. A woman near me whispered to her companion. Quote 7. They didn't realize the poor guy was standing right there. I looked past Trent into the boutique window and caught a glimpse of Dana inside, examining her dress. She looked happy. Whatever discomfort she'd felt sending that text had clearly passed. Trent ended his call and turned toward the boutique entrance. That's when he saw me. Clayton, hey man. He walked over, hands in his pockets. Didn't expect to see you here. Just passing by, I said. Right, so Dana talked to you? She did. And you're cool with everything? I told her congratulations. Trent studied me, trying to figure out if I was being genuine or passive-aggressive. That's good, man. That's mature. Big weddings are expensive. Every plate counts. And Dana and I, we're building something real here. We need people around us who match that energy. Translation. You don't match that energy. Quote 16, I said. Quote 17. He clapped me on the shoulder, dismissive. Quote 18. He walked into the boutique. Through the window, I watched him approach Dana. She turned, saw him, and her whole face lit up. I walked away. The woman who'd been whispering earlier caught my eye. Sympathy written all over her face. I reached my car 4 blocks over and sat in the driver's seat for a full minute in silence. My phone buzzed again. A group message. Someone had forwarded me into a thread I wasn't supposed to see. I scrolled up. Trent, 3 days ago. Just to be clear, Clayton is not on the guest list. He brings nothing to the table, and I don't want him dragging down the whole event with his gloomy energy. Dana's response. Q. Quote 20. Maid of honor. Quote 21. Trent. Quote 22. The messages continued. People I'd never met discussing me like a problem to be managed, and Dana never defended me once. I set the phone down and started the engine. Something had shifted. Not anger. Anger would have been loud and useless. This was something colder, more focused. They thought I was pathetic. They thought I was irrelevant. They had no idea what I actually did for a living, what I actually had access to, what I actually knew. And that was going to be their biggest mistake. My apartment wasn't much. Studio space in an older building where rent stayed reasonable. One room, kitchenette, bathroom, minimal furniture. People like Trent saw places like this and assumed failure. What they didn't see was the absence of a mortgage, the investment account I'd been feeding for 15 years, the complete freedom that came with living below my means. Friday night, I sat at my table with a beer and pulled up old photos. Dana's college graduation. I'd driven 8 hours because our parents couldn't make it. Dana's 30th birthday. I'd covered half the bill because she was between jobs. The time I'd helped her move into Trent's place, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs in 90-degree heat while Trent supervised and drank iced tea. That last memory stuck. 2 years ago. Dana had been so excited. Quote 23. She'd told me. He's confident. He knows what he wants. What about what you want? I'd asked. She'd laughed. That's the point, Clayton. I want what he wants. I'd helped her pack everything. When we finished, she'd hugged me. Thanks, big brother. I don't know what I'd do without you. 2 years later, he says you're pathetic. I closed the photo app and opened my work email. Property compliance wasn't glamorous. I worked for a regional housing corporation, managing mixed-use properties across 4 counties. My job was making sure everything stayed legal, properly documented, and compliant with local housing codes, which meant I saw everything. Every lease, every ownership transfer, every violation notice, every compliance requirement. Monday morning would be the annual property reassessment cycle. Routine stuff. I'd review every address in our corporate portfolio, flag any issues, send out notices for missing documentation. My phone buzzed. Family thread. Aunt Veronica. So excited for Dana's big day. Cousin Phil. About time someone in this family did something worth celebrating. Phil and I had been close growing up. He knew what I'd been through. He knew how much I'd done for Dana. And now, about time someone in this family did something worth celebrating. I closed the app. Saturday morning, I went to the downtown bar to pick up a jacket I'd left there weeks ago. The bartender handed it over, and I was about to leave when I heard voices from the back section. Quote 32. Aunt Veronica. Quote 33. Uncle Ray's voice. Guys had every opportunity. Some people just don't have drive. Can't blame Dana for wanting to distance herself. But he's always been there for her. Being there isn't the same as being successful. Trent's a go-getter. That's the kind of man who moves forward in life. Clayton's just stuck. I stood by the entrance, listening to my own family dissect my failures. They didn't know I was there. I left without saying anything. Sunday evening, I sat at my table with a legal pad and started writing. A timeline. Every time I'd helped Dana financially. Every favor, every loan, every crisis I'd stepped in to handle. Not to guilt her, but because I needed to see the pattern clearly. 15 years of being the reliable one. And what had it earned me? My phone calendar notification popped up. Quote 37. I stared at it. Mallory, Trent's last name. I opened my work laptop and pulled up the corporate housing database, typed in his address, the record loaded, corporate-owned property, conditional occupancy, monthly compliance reporting required. And according to the file, Trent hadn't filed a compliance report in 14 months. I leaned back and looked at the screen for a long time. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a small, precise idea began to form. Monday morning came gray and cold. I got to the office 40 minutes early, before the usual crowd arrived. The Property Compliance Division occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse building downtown. Exposed brick, industrial windows, the kind of space that looked trendy, but was really just cheap real estate our corporation had acquired in a bulk purchase years ago. My desk sat in the corner by the east-facing windows. No cubicle walls, just an open floor plan where everyone could see everyone else's screens if they bothered to look. Nobody ever bothered. Property compliance was the department people forgot existed until something went catastrophically wrong. I made coffee in the break room, the real stuff, not the pod machine nonsense, and settled in at my desk. Opened the annual reassessment file. 347 properties to review, verify, and update. Most would be fine. Standard renewals, no issues. A dozen or so would need follow-up for minor violations. Maybe 2 or 3 would need serious attention. I started at the top of the list and worked methodically through each entry. 2 hours in, I reached Mallory, Trent, 4582 Riverside Commons Drive. The file opened with all the history attached. Property acquired by our corporation 6 years ago as part of a portfolio purchase from a failing commercial real estate group. Converted to corporate housing program. Basically, we leased it to qualifying occupants at below-market rates, in exchange for maintaining strict compliance with property standards and filing monthly documentation. Good for people who needed affordable housing in decent neighborhoods. Good for us because it kept properties occupied and generating income while qualifying for certain tax benefits. Trent had moved in 4 years ago. The initial paperwork looked clean. Application approved, credit check cleared, first-year compliance reports filed on time. Then the reports started getting irregular. Months skipped, extensions requested. Eventually, they just stopped altogether. I pulled up the compliance requirements document. Every corporate housing occupant had to file monthly reports, confirming the property met basic standards, working utilities, no unpermitted structural changes, proper insurance coverage, routine maintenance completed. Simple stuff. Took maybe 20 minutes a month. Trent's last filed report, 14 months ago. I checked the automated notice log. Our system sent reminder emails at 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days past due. After that, it flagged for manual review. The manual review note written by my predecessor before he retired. Quote 38. That note was 8 months old. Nobody had followed up. I opened a new window and pulled up the property's current status. Conditional occupancy, subject to compliance. The agreement Trent signed when he moved in was very clear. Failure to maintain compliance could result in reassignment of occupancy rights. Reassignment. That was the corporate term. What it actually meant was they could move the property to a different occupant without requiring the current resident to technically break their lease. The corporation retained ownership. The occupant was essentially a long-term renter with very specific obligations. Obligations Trent had ignored for over a year. I sat back and stared at the screen. This was just information. A file. Facts. Nothing more. My phone buzzed. Dana. Hey, I know this is last minute, but can you not come to the rehearsal dinner either? Trent's family is kind of traditional, and he thinks it would be awkward having you there when you're not in the actual wedding. I hope that's okay? I typed back. Sure. She responded immediately. You're the best. Thanks for being so understanding about everything. Understanding. Right. I looked back at the computer screen. The Mallory file was still open, waiting for me to make a decision. Flag for follow-up, send another notice, schedule a compliance review, or, if the violation was severe enough, initiate reassignment proceedings. Standard procedure would be to send another notice. Give Trent one more chance to file his overdue reports. Maybe set up a meeting to discuss getting back on track. But there was another option. The clause buried in Section 7.3 of the Corporate Housing Agreement. In cases where compliance violations pose potential risk to property integrity or program viability, immediate reassignment may be initiated without additional notice period. Potential risk to program viability. That could mean a lot of things. It could mean chronic non-compliance that set a bad precedent. It could mean an occupant who clearly didn't respect the terms of their housing arrangement. It could mean whatever the compliance officer, me, determined it meant. I pulled up the corporate records archive system. Every property in our portfolio had a complete history attached: previous owners, title transfers, inspection reports, zoning changes, everything. I typed in the Riverside Commons address and started reading. The house itself was in good shape. Built in 2008, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, updated kitchen, finished basement. Market value around $340,000. Trent was paying just under $2,000 a month for it, well below market rate for the neighborhood. That was the whole point of the corporate housing program: affordable access in exchange for compliance. I found the original purchase documents from when our corporation acquired it. Conditional sale from the previous real estate group. We technically owned it, but there were layers of trust agreements and corporate entities involved. Normal, complicated property stuff that most people never bothered to understand. What caught my attention was a note in the title history. Quote 44. Dormant reassignment clause. I'd seen those before. Basically meant the property could be moved to a different program or occupant structure if our corporation decided to restructure. It was a flexibility mechanism, rarely used, mostly forgotten, but completely legal. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a USB drive. Routine backup drive I used for annual reviews. I copied the Mallory file, all of it, every document, every notice, every piece of history, onto the drive. Then I labeled it Corp Title Mallory. My office phone rang. Internal extension. Clayton, it's Nora. You got a minute? Nora Benton. Old friend. Worked in title research for the county clerk's office. We'd met years ago at a property law conference and stayed in touch because we both dealt with the boring back end of real estate that nobody else cared about. Sure, I said. What's up? I'm looking at a title inquiry that came through this morning. Riverside Commons Drive, 4582. Your corporation owns it, right? I felt something shift in my chest. We do. Someone requested a title history report. Usually that means a sale or refinance. You guys planning to move that property? Not that I know of. Who requested it? Anonymous public records request. Could be anyone: investor, nosy neighbor, attorney, doing background research. But I figured I'd give you a heads up since it's in your portfolio. Thanks, Nora. No problem. Hey, you doing okay? Haven't heard from you in a while? I'm fine, I said. Just busy with annual reviews. All right, let me know if you need anything. We hung up. I stared at my computer screen. Someone had requested a title history on Trent's house. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was routine. Or maybe, and this felt more likely, it was the universe handing me information exactly when I needed it. My phone buzzed again. Another group message. The wedding planning thread. Trent. Quote 58. Someone responded with congratulations and heart emojis. Someone else asked about the itinerary. I opened a separate window and pulled up our corporation's travel partnership program. We had arrangements with certain hotels and resorts for corporate employee travel. Sometimes those arrangements extended to corporate housing occupants if they qualified. I typed in the resort name Trent had mentioned. Partner property. Corporate rate verification required. I sat very still. Everything was starting to connect in ways I hadn't anticipated. The house, the compliance violations, the travel arrangements, the title inquiry, pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was assembling. My supervisor walked past my desk, coffee in hand. Morning, Clayton. How's the review going? Smooth, I said. Just flagged one property for closer examination. Need any backup? No, I've got it handled. He nodded and kept walking. Nobody questioned the details. That was the beauty of this job. As long as everything looked orderly and professional, nobody dug deeper. I created a new folder on my desktop. Saturday. Then I went back to work. Tuesday afternoon, I took a late lunch and drove to Nora's place. She lived in a converted townhouse near the county administration building, convenient for work, quiet neighborhood, the kind of location title researchers loved because it was close to all the records they spent their lives tracking. She answered the door in jeans and a university sweatshirt, reading glasses pushed up onto her forehead. Quote 64. Quote 65. Quote 66. Her home office took up the entire second floor. Wall-to-wall filing cabinets, a desk covered in organized stacks of documents, 2 monitors displaying property records. Nora had been doing title research for 26 years. If there was something strange in a property's history, she'd seen it before. I handed her the USB drive. Quote 67. She took it, curious. Quote 68. Quote 69. Nora plugged in the drive and started scrolling through the files. Her expression shifted as she read, focused, then concerned, then something like recognition. Quote 70, she said quietly. Quote 71, quote 72, quote 73, quote 74. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Quote 75, quote 76. She turned back to the screen and opened the title history documents, scrolled through pages of technical legal language that would have put most people to sleep. Okay, so your corporation purchased this property 6 years ago as part of a bulk acquisition. The original owner had defaulted on commercial loans, and the portfolio got sold to settle debt. Normal foreclosure situation. With me so far, I said. But here's where it gets interesting. She zoomed in on a specific clause. This property was never fully transferred into standard corporate ownership. It's held in a subsidiary trust structure with a dormant reassignment clause. That means your corporation can essentially recategorize how the property is used without going through normal sale or lease termination procedures. Can they remove an occupant? If that occupant violates the terms of their agreement? Absolutely. The conditional occupancy structure isn't a traditional lease. It's more like a revocable license to occupy. The occupant has no ownership stake. They're there at the corporation's discretion, contingent on compliance. And if they're not compliant? Nora pulled up another section of the agreement. Then the corporation can reassign the property with 30 days' notice. The occupant has to vacate. No appeals process, no negotiation. It's all spelled out in the original agreement they signed. I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, more like confirmation. What if they try to fight it? I asked. On what grounds? They signed the agreement. They accepted the below-market rate in exchange for following specific rules. They broke the rules. Corporate housing programs have very clear terms precisely because they're not traditional landlord-tenant relationships. So it's airtight. Legally, yes. Ethically? She looked at me carefully. That depends on why you're asking. I didn't answer right away. Nora and I had known each other long enough that she could read the spaces between words. Quote 90, she said gently. Quote 91. Quote 92. Quote 93. I told her. Not everything, but enough. My sister's wedding. The text message. The years of being dismissed and sidelined. The family conversation at the bar. The group messages treating me like a problem to be managed. Nora listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. So the man who lives in this house is your future brother-in-law, she said. Correct. And he has no idea you work in property compliance. No idea. And he's been violating the terms of his housing agreement for over a year. That's what the records show. Nora leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling. You know what the hard part is? The hard part is that everything you're considering is completely legal. You'd be doing your job, following procedures, enforcing terms that exist for legitimate reasons. But, I prompted, but motivation matters, not legally, but personally. Are you doing this because it needs to be done, or because you want to hurt someone who hurt you? I thought about that. Really thought about it. Both, I said finally. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human. She pulled the USB drive out and handed it back to me. Here's what I'll tell you. I pulled the title history yesterday when that anonymous request came through. I can tell you that the property is clean. No liens, no secondary claims, no complications. If your corporation initiates reassignment, it'll go through without issues. The anonymous request? Any idea who made it? Could be anyone. Could be an investor checking properties in the area. Could be a lawyer doing background research. Could be your corporation's own internal audit department running routine checks. She paused. Could be someone who had a reason to look into that specific address. You think someone's already investigating? I think properties don't just randomly get title requests unless something prompted it. But that's speculation. I stood up. Thanks, Nora. Clayton. Wait. She walked me to the door. Whatever you decide to do, make sure it's something you can live with. Revenge is easy to justify in the moment. It's the afterward that gets complicated. I'll keep that in mind. And one more thing. She touched my arm. I'm sorry your family treated you that way. You didn't deserve it. That hit harder than I expected. I nodded and left before the emotion could show. Wednesday morning, I drove to the county title office. Public records, open to anyone who wanted to look. I requested copies of all documents related to 4582 Riverside Commons Drive. The clerk barely looked up, just processed the request, and handed me a receipt. 20 minutes later, I had a folder full of printouts. Everything Nora had told me was confirmed in black and white. The conditional occupancy agreement, the compliance requirements, the reassignment clause, the dormant trust structure, and something else I hadn't seen before, a log of violation notices. Not just the automated emails from our system, but physical notices that should have been mailed to the property. 6 of them over the past year. Notices Trent had apparently never received, or more likely, received and ignored. I photographed every page with my phone, backed up the photos to 3 separate cloud accounts. Then I filed the original documents in a folder labeled, simply, Evidence. That evening, I opened my work email and found the corporate headquarters newsletter. Standard stuff, employee updates, policy changes, upcoming events. But one item caught my attention. Mandatory attendance, quarterly shareholder meeting, Monday, 9 a.m. All compliance officers required. Monday. The day after Dana's wedding. I stared at that notice for a long time. Then I opened a new email and began drafting a compliance review report for the Mallory property. Professional, thorough, completely by the book. I attached every piece of documentation, every missed report, every ignored notice, every violation of the occupancy agreement. I saved it as a draft. Didn't send it. Not yet. My phone buzzed. The wedding group chat again. Someone had posted a photo of the venue. White chairs, flower arrangements, elegant lighting. Dana had commented, 3 more days. I can't believe it's finally happening. Trent's response, best decision I ever made was removing the unnecessary baggage and focusing on what truly matters. I closed the message app and went back to my draft email. Friday evening, I met Nora at a quiet restaurant downtown. She'd asked me to dinner earlier in the week, said she had something to show me. We ordered, made small talk. Then she pulled out her own folder. Quote, 21, she said. Quote, 122. Quote, 123. Quote, 124. Quote, 125. Quote, 126. Quote, 127. Quote, 128. She slid the folder across to me. Quote, 129. I opened the folder and scanned the documents. Everything was meticulously organized, cross-referenced, highlighted. Quote, 130. I asked. Nora smiled. Quote, 131. Quote, 132. Quote, 133. She leaned forward. Quote, 134. Quote, 135. Quote, 136. We finished dinner. Nora picked up the check over my protests, saying this one was on her. As we walked to our cars, she stopped and turned to me. Quote 137, quote 138, quote 139, Quote 140, quote 141, she unlocked her car. Quote 142. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks, not because I was excited about what was coming, but because I finally knew exactly what I was going to do, and more importantly, I knew it was going to work. Saturday morning, wedding day. I woke up at 6, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. The draft compliance report was still open, waiting for one final review before submission. I read through it twice, checking every citation, every reference, every piece of documentation. Perfect, professional, unassailable. I attached the supporting files, the violation logs, the title documents, the occupancy agreement with relevant sections highlighted. Then I scheduled the email to send Monday morning at 8 a.m., 1 hour before the shareholder meeting. The timing mattered. Too early and someone might try to delay or suppress the report. Too late and I'd lose the element of documentation in a public forum. 8 a.m. gave compliance review exactly enough time to flag it as urgent and add it to the meeting agenda. I closed the laptop and showered, got dressed in comfortable clothes. This wasn't a day I was expected anywhere. This was a day I'd been deliberately excluded from, which meant I was free to handle other business. I pulled up the corporate travel partnership portal on my phone, logged in with my work credentials. The system recognized me as a compliance officer with verification authority. I navigated to active reservations and typed in Trent's name. One result: Costa Rica Resort, 5 nights, check-in scheduled for 8 p.m. tonight, premium ocean view suite, all-inclusive package, total value, $4,800, discounted to $1,900 through the corporate partnership program. The reservation was flagged. Quote 143. That flag existed because corporate housing occupants had to maintain good standing to access the travel benefits. It was automatic. The system checked compliance status whenever a corporate rate was used. Except Trent's compliance status was 14 months delinquent. The system should have denied his reservation automatically, but there was a grace period built in, 90 days from booking to verification. Trent had booked the honeymoon 4 months ago, before the grace period expired. Now that grace period was over. I pulled up the verification override screen. As a compliance officer, I could manually approve or deny the reservation based on current status. Current status, non-compliant. I selected Deny, occupant not in good standing. A confirmation box appeared. This action will cancel the reservation and invalidate the corporate rate discount. The resort will be notified that corporate verification could not be confirmed. Continue? I clicked Yes. The screen refreshed. Reservation status changed to Canceled. Verification failed. I logged out and set my phone down. It was done. Or rather, one part of it was done. The rest would unfold on its own. I made breakfast and tried not to think about what was happening across town. Dana getting ready with her bridesmaids. Trent adjusting his tie in front of a mirror, feeling like he'd won some unspoken competition. Family members gathering at the venue, excited and happy, none of them giving a second thought to the brother who wasn't there. My phone buzzed at noon. Dana, surprisingly. Hey, I know this is weird, but I wanted to say thank you for being so cool about everything. It means a lot that you're not making this harder. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to respond honestly, to tell her exactly how I felt about being erased from her life, about watching our relationship dissolve because her fiancé found me inconvenient. But that would accomplish nothing. It would just make me look bitter and prove them right. So I typed, I hope it's everything you wanted. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, it really is. I'm so happy, Clayton, I wish you could see that. I didn't respond. At 6 p.m. I drove to the airport. Not the main terminal where departures happened, but the observation area where you could watch planes from a distance. I parked and walked to the outdoor viewing platform. The airport was busy with Saturday evening travel. Families hauling luggage, business travelers checking phones, couples heading off for weekend getaways. Normal people doing normal things. I checked my phone. The wedding ceremony would be over by now, reception in full swing. Dana and Trent would leave around 7:30, drive straight to the airport, check in for their 8 p.m. international flight. At 7:45, my phone buzzed with a notification. Email from the Costa Rica resort, forwarded through the corporate system because I was listed as the compliance officer of record. Quote 150. I looked up and scanned the terminal entrance. Couldn't see much from this distance, but I didn't need to. I could imagine it clearly enough. Trent and Dana arriving, excited and exhausted from the wedding, checking in at the airline counter, the agent typing their information, then that small pause, that confused expression. Quote 151. Trent would argue, demand explanations, try to pull rank with corporate credentials that didn't actually give him authority. The agent would be polite, but firm. I'm afraid you'll need to contact the resort directly, sir. They've indicated the corporate verification didn't go through. Dana would be confused. Trent would be furious. And slowly, very slowly, they'd realize their perfect honeymoon had just evaporated. I stayed at the observation platform until 8:30, watched planes take off into the darkening sky. Somewhere in that terminal, my sister and her new husband were dealing with a crisis they didn't understand. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a cold, settled certainty that this was how things needed to be. At 9 p.m. I drove home, ordered pizza, watched a movie I'd been meaning to see for months. My phone stayed silent. Dana didn't text. Trent didn't call. Nobody reached out. Which made sense. They still didn't know I was involved. They still thought I was just the pathetic brother who'd accepted his exclusion quietly. Tomorrow they'd probably scramble to find alternative accommodations, maybe pay full price at a different resort, maybe postpone the honeymoon entirely. Whatever they did, it would be expensive and inconvenient and absolutely nothing like what they'd planned. And Monday morning, when that compliance report landed in the shareholder meeting, they'd understand that tonight's disruption was just the beginning. I finished my pizza and went to bed early. Tomorrow was Sunday. A nothing day, a waiting day. The calm before everything changed. I slept better than I had in weeks. Monday morning arrived cold and sharp. I dressed carefully. Dark suit, pressed shirt, conservative tie. The shareholder meeting required professional appearance, and I wanted no room for anyone to dismiss me based on presentation. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. at corporate headquarters downtown. Large conference room on the 7th floor with glass walls overlooking the city. I arrived at 8:30 and took a seat near the middle. My phone buzzed at 8:45, email notification. The compliance report had been received, flagged as urgent, and added to the meeting agenda under, quote, 153, perfect. At 8:58, the door opened and someone unexpected walked in. Trent Mallory. He looked stressed, tired, angry. His eyes scanned the room and landed on me. Recognition flickered across his face, but he didn't approach. Just took a seat in the back row. He had no idea why he'd been summoned here. The meeting began promptly at 9. I sat through 20 minutes of operational updates and financial projections. Then the chairman reached the agenda item I'd been waiting for. Next item. Priority property issue flagged by our compliance division. Clayton Hale, would you like to present? I stood up, felt every eye in the room shift to me. Thank you. I'm presenting a compliance review for a corporate housing property that requires immediate attention. The property in question is 4582 Riverside Commons Drive, currently occupied by Trent Mallory under our conditional occupancy program. Movement in the back row. Trent sat forward, suddenly alert. I continued. Mr. Mallory entered the program 4 years ago and initially maintained good compliance. However, beginning 14 months ago, he ceased filing required monthly reports. Our automated system sent multiple reminder notices. He did not respond. I projected the documentation on the conference room screen. Every missed report, every ignored notice, every violation clearly time-stamped and logged. According to the conditional occupancy agreement Mr. Mallory signed, chronic non-compliance allows the corporation to reassign the property. I'm recommending we exercise that option. Silence filled the room. The chairman looked at Trent. Mr. Mallory, would you like to respond? Trent stood up. His face had gone red. This is insane. I've been living in that house for 4 years. I pay my monthly fees on time. This is some kind of mistake. The monthly fees are separate from compliance reporting requirements, I said calmly. The agreement you signed specifies both financial and documentation obligations. You've met one, but not the other. I never got any notices. I projected the notice log. 6 notices were mailed to your address over the past 12 months. 3 additional emails were sent. All correspondence is documented. Trent's expression shifted to something uglier. Quote 164. The room got very quiet. I met his eyes. Quote 165. Quote 166, said a voice from the doorway. Nora Benton walked in, carrying a folder. Quote 167. The chairman frowned. Quote 168. Quote 169. She walked to the front and began distributing copies of her report. Quote 170. Trent stood again. Quote 171. Quote 172, Nora said. Quote 173. Quote 174, he asked finally. The chairman looked at me. Quote 175. Quote 176. Quote 177. Trent's voice cracked. You've had 14 months to maintain compliance. You chose not to. The chairman cleared his throat. Let's bring this to a vote. All in favor of proceeding with property reassignment as recommended by Mr. Hale? Hands rose around the room. More than enough. Motion carries. Mr. Mallory, you'll receive formal notice by end of business today. You have 7 days to vacate the property. Trent's face had drained of color. The arrogance, the swagger, the certainty that he controlled everything, all of it collapsed in real time. The chairman nodded. Meeting adjourned. Trent walked out without another word. I gathered my documents and stood up. The chairman approached me, extended his hand. Excellent work, Clayton. I shook his hand and walked out. Outside, the morning sun hit my face. I took a breath of cold air and felt something settle deep in my chest. Satisfaction. Pure, clean, and absolute.